Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, a nationally ranked community-focused bank with over 30 locations throughout Virginia, Northeast Tennessee, and North Carolina. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more. What's going on, Hokie Nation? We got a very special show on set for you here today. The head coach of the Hammerin' Hokies, John Szefc, is right here in-house, and we're going to unpack everything so far when it comes down to baseball in 2025, when it comes down to what's ahead for this program, and so much more. It's episode 417 of the Tech Sideline podcast, and it starts right now. And we're recording on Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025 from our high-tech studio right here at the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. As always, remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to your friends. I'm Giovanni Heener. To my right, it's our premier baseball writer, Mr. Dylan Teft. Behind the scenes producing the show, Mr. Nick Brown, the mustache man, and head coach, John Szefc, and his 8th year at the helm sitting across the way. Coach, I believe second time on the set. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, I think I was here, I don't know how many years ago it was, but it might have been pre-COVID. Okay. Nowadays, it's like BC. Like I term everything pre-COVID and post-COVID. It's sad to say, but it's true. So, yeah.
There you go. Well, we just mentioned it. 8th year at the helm. Yeah. Time really does fly.
It does.
Just want to start surface level for you here. What has this place, Blacksburg, meant to you and your family?
Well, I mean, it's basically been what we thought it would be, I would say, as far as the family part of it. It's a good place to live, good place to have your kids grow up. You don't spend your life in the car going back and forth to work. I mean, I could walk to work if I wanted to. So, and obviously living in a college town, I think is a great place for young kids to grow up. My kids in general, with the atmosphere and everything that surrounds the university, I think, and Blacksburg in general.
Big milestone as of late, right? 600 wins in your career came against Louisville on Sunday, and then 200 wins at Virginia Tech when we were down in Greenville just a couple of weeks ago. You can't do it alone. Who helps make all that happen?
Well, I mean, as I look at it, my first year at Marist was 1996. And so I was there for 7 years, and then I kind of took a hiatus from being a head coach for 10 years, and between Louisiana Lafayette, Kansas, and Kansas State, I was an assistant for 10 years. And I think it really kind of helped me as far as working for 3 different guys, seeing a lot of different things, seeing baseball played at the Power 5 at that time level. And then it kind of got me, I think, more equipped to go back to being a head coach, where I spent 5 years at Maryland and then came here from Maryland. I think just along the way, though, you're around a lot of really good baseball people as far as assistant coaches. Obviously, you're winning games with good players. And typically, I think if you are in a place where you can recruit good players and you have resources that are on the same level as everybody else in your league, and if you're doing things right and treating people properly, you should be able to have success and win some games. And that's kind of, I know that sounds kind of basic, but that's really all it is. It's just trying to do your job the proper way each day, regardless of the situation. Some days it's easier than others. But I think I just feel like I've been lucky enough to be around good baseball people, good people in general, and where we've had, fair resources compared to our competitors.
What you got, Dylan?
One thing that I can't help but notice about these successful last couple of weeks is that, you're winning in a multitude of ways. Some games it's power, some games it's small ball, some games you're winning a game where you walk a team 12 times. What's been the biggest factor in finding that balance as of late?
Well, I think with this team in particular, you have a lot of different weapons, so to speak, and different ways you can go. And, with some of our recent injuries, it'll have to be even more so. Where we're just using a lot of different guys, a lot of different arms and situations. And, honestly, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. There's no real recipe for the true success. I think Sunday's game at Wake Forest was a good example of that, where, you're bringing guys cold off the bench, have been sitting there for 3 hours just because we felt like the matchup was right in the ninth, and it I give them a lot of credit. Guys like Gibson and Lewis, they did a really good job of coming off the bench and being productive. And a guy like Cam Lejeune, who didn't have his best stuff that day, but hung in there long enough where we could get out of there the way it ended. And I think sometimes, especially like I talk to our guys a lot about this, where the game in the league really rewards more the marathon runner than the sprinter. And I think one of our big points of reference is to try to be as good at the end as we were at the beginning. And you have some ups and downs along the way. I mean, honestly, the last 48 hours is a great example of what the game is. It's cruel. It can be really cruel at times. You can be on the top of the mountain one day and then the outhouse the next, and that's just, I mean, you can say that about sport in general. And I think other coaches would probably be able to identify with that. But the bottom line is that you try to you try to buy into the long haul as opposed to the short term, and that's what we're trying to do.
Back-to-back series wins for Virginia Tech baseball over ranked opponents. Took 2 of 3 2 weeks ago here against Louisville, and then swept Wake Forest on the road. Coach, you don't do it without the transfers. How have the transfers on this team really found their footing and settled into their roles on this team?
Well, we have a lot of different guys in a lot of different roles. I think the majority of the transfers that we have did not play in leagues like the ACC. So, as good and as talented as they are, it also takes a little bit of time for them, I think, to get acclimated with the league, as it does for a true freshman, like a Marciano or an Anderson French, for instance, or an Eisenrich, for instance. So, I'd like to think that the first couple weekends against Georgia Tech, and then you go on the road and you play a 9-hour doubleheader at NC State, and hopefully that gets everybody a little more acclimated with what the league is, how fast the game is, how good the opponent is, how long the games can be as far as back and forth goes. It can be. One of my friends recently texted me and said, how can you adjust to the roller coaster that this league can be? And he's exactly right. I mean, the league is not just a roller coaster, but the season in general can be that way. So I think you try to keep your guys as grounded as possible, as level as possible. Today in this coming trip to Notre Dame will be a good test of that. Based off of what we've come off of in the last 48 hours. So, you're going to go out there and you try to move on, separate one day from another, one game from another, and try to put your best foot forward come Friday.
Some of those transfers that Gio mentioned are in the outfield, and you built that outfield not necessarily knowing that Ben Watson would be back or that Sam Tackett would emerge the way he did.
Yeah.
Has it been difficult to find time for all these outfielders?
It has, I would say. I mean, again, as a coach, you're trying to keep as many guys involved and happy as you can. And it's very difficult to do that because, when a guy like Watson comes back, I mean, you just had the ACC batting champion just dropped in your lap when you didn't expect that to happen. And a guy like Tackett, who's in his 5th year, is playing his best baseball. And God bless him. I mean, he's put in a lot of wear and tear over that time, and I think he's starting to see the fruits of that labor. But those two guys can't do it all the time. They're not going to be able to do it every day. So that's why, hopefully you develop kind of like a rotation in that outfield and a matchup game in that outfield, which includes, guys like Hughes and Pittman and Cherry. Micah Jordan played yesterday a little bit more than he had. Just among others, there's plenty others as well, but just to name a few. So we tried to, really, I always just keep going back to the matchup. Like, what's the best matchup that day, and who do we have available? I mean, because the availability thing it gets tougher as time goes. You have guys, significant injuries, minor injuries. This guy's sore, that guy can't play a full day. I mean, so it's like you just try to put the best group you can on the field and just go inning by inning, really.
Coach, is there a way to explain the emergence of Sam Tackett? Because we've always known him to be this glue guy, right, who's really had to earn his opportunities on the field. He had a tremendous fall, not this past fall, but the fall before that, right? And it just didn't quite transpire into the spring. And then, boom, all of a sudden he's an ACC Player of the Year contender here.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
Well, I think he's always been good enough. It's just a matter of, like you said, him kind of bringing it into the spring. He's had great falls here. I don't think we've ever like questioned his ability. He's actually played several different positions here. He actually played shortstop in high school. But I think he's worked himself into being a potential pro level outfielder. But I think he plays the game with a lot more confidence now. Maybe a lot more. He's a little more comfortable in his setting. I mean, he's been here for 5 years. Like he's been through probably a lot more lows than highs. So for me, I really enjoy it. It's fun for me to see him have his highs, because if anybody deserves it, he does, for the amount of work and effort he's put in. And I also think he absolutely cares about what goes on here. As far as what the team, obviously he's concerned with his own play, and there's always a what's in it for me for every baseball player, probably for every athlete in general. But I think he genuinely cares about the team and what happens to the team and what's next for the team.
There have been a number of breakouts this year, and whenever I ask about them, they don't seem to particularly surprise you. Like, that's just the talent you saw in preseason shining in the spring.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who has actually surprised you?
I'd have to think about that one a little bit. I don't know. I can't really say that. Honestly, I mean, I've been like, I think our staff has been happy about, like, I'll use a guy like Jackson Cherry as an example. Now, it hasn't been a surprise because he's been in college for a while and he's finishing off his career here, and he's as tough as anybody. But I do think that maybe the quality of his at-bats in the first, 40% of the season have been very good. Not a surprise, but very good. But, if you went guy by guy from Marciano to Eisenrich to name the guy, I mean, I don't know that there's really any surprises in there as much as we're just kind of happy the guys are playing at the level they're playing at, because it's helped us construct lineups, make moves, and it's helped our team be successful, really.
I think Dylan used a great word in his description of Hudson Luderman, which was seasoned, which is funny because he's a freshman. Yeah. He's got 13 RBI and 40 at-bats at this point, and really has emerged into that role. What is it about him that makes him seem so comfortable and in a lot of ways wise beyond his years?
Well, I think, one, he's good enough. I mean, like, our staff has compared him to like a young hitting version of a guy like Chris Cannizzaro, who had 2 really good years for us here offensively. So hopefully he emerges into that, but I don't know why he wouldn't. And then he's kind of multi-positional. Like, he looks the part in the infield, certainly at third base. And like, I think if you watch him play, as you guys do, and I mean, like Sunday we used it in some video work we were doing with our guys on Monday. I mean, he takes the ball off the chest and ends that inning on a kind of a tough hop. I mean, that's who that guy is. I mean, he's pretty tough. I'll give you. I mean, I think he is. I think he cares, and I think he has a really good future ahead of him. But that play in general, I think, really kind of defined maybe who he is, and why he's pretty well respected amongst our players and our coaching staff.
I know he committed back in 2021. I mean, what stuck out to you then that's kind of shining through now?
Well, I mean, he came from a really good baseball area in Knoxville, played shortstop, could hit. Like, he could do a lot of things. He pitched at the time. Every good baseball player usually pitches in high school, as he did. But I mean, he just had a lot of he just had a lot of baseball player. And I've said that about Ethan Gibson, and I would say that about Lutterman. Like those guys, you just got a lot. There's a lot of intangible baseball stuff in there, from offensively to defensively to, like, he's got a good feel for the game as far as where to play defensively, different hitters, how to adjust pitch by pitch, stuff that you don't necessarily always have to teach or instruct, I guess.
All right, Coach. Let's ask some not completely related to the team from a X's and O's or personnel standpoint. Let's ask some questions about running a baseball program, particularly in 2025. What is the most challenging aspect of your job running the Virginia Tech baseball program in this modern era of the sport, 2025?
Well, I don't know that I'd call it the most challenging, but I would say one of the challenging things about college baseball in the ACC in 2025 is having enough financial resources to do it. And we do have a ton of backing from our athletic department, which is good. I mean, it obviously keeps us at the level that we need to be at within the league. But like when you talk about excess stuff, like excess operating costs, excess NIL costs, I mean, there was once a time when I first got here where you're raising about 150 to 200 grand to operate. Now, with the addition of NIL, you can go north of 600. I mean, there's a monstrous difference compared now to what it used to be. And like, as we start April here, like we're still working on that north of 600. It's not that number, but it's somewhere below 50, but like we're still trying to get there. And it's a challenge, just like it is on the field. Everything's a challenge, right? So you try to take it on and create relationships and try to include people that are baseball people and keep them informed with what's going on in the program and why you need those resources to operate and to stay at the level that we want to stay at.
Piggybacking off of that, how have you seen NIL impact the sport of college baseball, and how competitive do you feel Virginia Tech is in that arena?
Well, it's not in the football basketball category.
Sure,
I don't think. I think everybody would understand that, but it's a thing. Like it's a thing in our league for sure, and I can point to probably a couple different, probably 4 or 5 different circumstances where we're recruiting a transfer and somebody else in our league is or in the SEC, and we're just not operating on that level, financially, to be able to go out there and invest the way some other people are in the past. Now, moving forward, hopefully we'll be able to get in that category, But I would tell you that the guys that have success for us here, I think it's a lot of blue collar people that work hard at the game. That I will tell you this: I think that if you're a 19 or 20-year-old guy that's chasing a dollar, and if that's your number one priority, as opposed to working at the game, having an opportunity to play, you're chasing the wrong thing. Because any adult can identify you're going to chase a dollar the rest of your life. When you're married and you have kids and you're trying to pay bills, like everyone north of 25 is chasing a buck. But if you're doing that south of 25 and the priority is to get a new car or a new truck, I struggle with that, But I also understand the reality of what NIL is. I get it. And it's definitely helped us to get good players here, But I would tell you that, with where the climate is going in college athletics, it's a part of it, but it's not everything. And it's just a small part of it in college baseball, I think.
It's a great answer, Coach.
A newer part of that landscape is revenue sharing. How do you see that playing an impact on baseball?
I just think it's a school-by-school question. It really is. As far as how we operate here, I'm not really I can't really go too deep into that just because, April 7th and the whole house settlement thing is coming. So I can't really wrap my arms too much around that just because I don't know yet for sure. It's really, I'm not in a place to really know about it totally. So what we do is we take the resources we have as far as scholarship dollars, some NIL dollars, and anything else that we get, and try to put the best team that we can together. We've done it in the last 2 years, and we'll continue to do it. That's the best. That's 100% of what we'll do.
This is a question about how you like to make up your roster a little bit, Coach. Obviously, the limit is going back down to numbers that are kind of similar to pre-COVID. You got the current transfer landscape. What's your kind of ideal split with how you want your roster to look? Number of transfers, former players coming back, and then incoming freshmen as well. Well,
I don't think it's – I think more the split is not necessarily that. It's more pitcher versus position player. If you can have experience, like the more experience you have, probably the better off you're going to be in a league like this, where you're playing teams that have similar experience or more so. But I would tell you, I do think that to the core of our core in our program, and if you look at our roster, the guys that have had a ton of success here and that have really helped us move it forward have been guys that have come straight out of high school. They have. And that's not knocking our transfers, because without some of our transfer guys, we wouldn't be in a good place. They're a huge part of it too.
Sure.
So it is a mix. It's a mix between high school guys and transfer guys. I can't tell you, if we're sitting on 34, for instance, I can't say whether it's going to be 17 and 17 or 18 and 16. That's, because you also look at guys that are injured. Okay, maybe I didn't expect this guy to come back, but he got hurt, so he's going to come back. Or maybe I thought Ben Watson, I thought he was going to be drafted, wasn't picked, comes back to you're not planning for that, So that's the weird thing about college baseball, because there's a draft here too, and it's in July. So
right.
You're trying to put your roster honestly in this day and age, the months of June and July have become very, very difficult to kind of move through, because you're trying to get a feel of who's coming back, who's not. How guys performed off your current team, and maybe who didn't do so well. What high school guys you might end up losing in the draft that might not even make it to school, versus guys that want to come to school. And so much of the draft now is signability, I think. It's not necessarily just about how good you are. It's about how signable you are. And I would tell you this, the best players, and I give you a great example, a guy like Brett Renfro. He could have signed out of high school for a smaller number and decide, hey, I'm going to go to college, pitch in the ACC. And I think this time next year, that guy, he's going to write his own check.
Yeah.
I mean, he is. He's going to be, he'll be at that level.
No doubt.
And then about Brett, we're so used to him delivering these strikeout-heavy outings, but as of late, the outings have been longer, the strikeouts have been down.
Mm-hmm.
What is he kind of changing his approach to maybe get that efficiency up, but maybe the strikeout numbers are lower?
Well, I think he's probably pitching a lot more economically, where he's pitching to contact more, trusting his defense. Guys have played pretty well behind him. He typically a guy that's in the zone a lot like he is, he's gonna there's going to be a lot of contact that comes out of it. But I mean, I think he's gone from being, I'm going to strike everybody out and throw everything by people, to I'm going to work on kind of crafting my pitches to be able to command multiple pitches, locate multiple pitches. And if a strikeout comes, it comes. If it doesn't, and it's a ground ball to Grady at short, then God bless it, that'll work too. It's really not about It's not about the strikeout numbers. It's more about the outs, and he's always been very, very good at producing outs. So that's how we go.
I know you got one more on the pitchers, so I'll let you ride with that.
Just one thing about the bullpen, it seems to be getting a lot healthier, and now with Lejeune, Grant Manning, Andrew Sellinger, Preston Crow, guys that can go 6 to 9 outs. Just as it's getting healthier, how do you like the way your bullpen is shaping up?
Yeah. Well, it is definitely shaping up, and I think what I've found is one of the hardest things for bullpen guys to do in this league is to come into a game from the bullpen, get 2 or 3 outs, sit down, and then come back out and do it again. That's the hardest thing I've seen in college baseball, for any college baseball player to do. So as those guys develop and they're able to go 2 outs, sit down, go back out and get 3. That's where like if you're looking at is the bullpen developing, like look for that. There's going to be some guys that are going to come in for an out or 2 at a clip, but the guy that can come in, get an out or 2 or 3, sit down, come back out and do it again, like that increases the value that much more of that particular guy.
All right, Coach. This one's on behalf of the fan base, if you will.
Yeah.
You get the 2 big ranked series victories, especially that sweep over Wake Forest, this huge jolt of momentum, and all of a sudden everything's getting tossed around. Hey, it's feeling like 2022. It's feeling like that kind of a team once again. So kind of on the line of on behalf of the fan base, I would argue that is probably 2022, the best lineup 1 through 9 to ever suit up and wear a Virginia Tech uniform. Right. Every team, as you know, is different year to year.
It is, yeah.
What comparisons are there, both similarities and differences between that team, this team, and really just some of the best teams you've ever coached?
Well, my first thing would be it depends on who's on the field. Like, is Hughes in the game? Is he playing? Like he's good. I mean, he's one of our better players. A guy with 3 years of college experience, with SEC experience. Unfortunately, is a guy like Garrett Michelle in the game because with his recent injury, we're still kind of waiting on that one a little bit. That team in 22 was, people don't realize how close that team was away to not being that good. I mean, there were guys that played that summer, guys like Biddison and Cade Hunter that really didn't have good summers at all in Cape Cod. Cade was coming off a broken hammock bone. Jack Hurley was coming off of a 72 strikeout season. I mean, like, I didn't really think we were going to be that good. But we had 0 ACC starts returning that year, not one.
Wow.
So like there was a lot to not like about that team. And then what happened was so many guys played above their grade, 1, and 2, there was almost 0 injuries on that team. Garrett Giebel had a knee injury. That was it. 1 injury the whole year. So we had the availability of our players pretty much throughout the year. If you look at some of the teams we've had since that were arguably as talented, we've had a lot of guys off the field because of injuries. This team included. Now, this team, there's a lot of intangible stuff here. We have more team speed. We have more ACC starts returning, but I think we also have one of the youngest pitching staffs as far as starting pitchers in the country. When you're talking about Renfroe as a true sophomore and then a slew of freshmen behind him. I think we have a lot of developing bullpen arms, as you had mentioned before. To highlight one guy, as a guy like Lejeune starts to develop and settle into an end-of-the-game kind of role potentially, that I say this, whenever the guy pitches at the end, we win. That's what's happened. So I don't know how else to judge that one. That's a pretty black and white judgment right there.
Sure.
And it's true, But there's a lot. I would say, like, on that team, there was a lot of different ways we could win games. On this team, there's that's probably a similarity, a lot of different ways we can win games with speed, with a guy like, Davis or Grady or Pittman. That team slugged an awful lot. This team can slug a lot too. Depending on who's in the game and who's hot at the time. I do think we have one of the best hitters in the country in Watson, as we did with a guy like Gavin Cross that year. That's probably a similarity. Now, Gavin was a first rounder. You don't have too many of those guys hanging around. So I think there's a lot of similarities, yes, but there's also a slew of differences. And I don't know if that really answers your question.
No, it does.
But
it does.
Yeah, it can be an exciting group of guys to be around, I mean, like, there was a lot of magic in the sauce there on Sunday that you didn't really see coming. Or you didn't, like, maybe, not see, but maybe expect it. That's something that doesn't happen every very often. But that team in 22 had some moments like that too. So.
Well, we got to get a quick ad read in here. As always, Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. Today's TSL podcast also sponsored by Robertson and Cox Real Estate Team. Hokie parents and students, don't pay rent. Instead, invest. The RNC team can help you find the right place to buy for your student housing during your time in Blacksburg. Visit rncteam.com to learn more, and we'll drop the link in the YouTube description as well. Coach, kind of piggybacking off of that one, what does it take to capitalize on the current momentum, similar to what you were able to do in 2022, and carry that throughout the rest of the season? Because a whole lot of baseball left to be played.
There's a lot of baseball left, and going back to the whole marathon versus sprint comparison, I feel like we talk about that like on a weekly basis. But one thing I think I've kind of learned over the last few years here is not to look too far ahead, really. So the only thing that we I think are really just concerned or focused on right now is like practice tomorrow. As boring as that sounds at Notre Dame, and then just getting through the first inning there. And the more that we can just kind of stay kind of zoned in on just the next step and not look too far down the road, we'll probably have a lot more success, especially when, like I'm telling you, you're still dealing with a very young team here in that we have several true freshmen in the lineup or pitching. But the one thing that people might not quite understand is some of these transfer guys that are at Virginia Tech for the first time, they got a little bit of freshman in them too. Not age-wise or not school-wise, but baseball-wise, they're still getting used to life in the ACC, games in the ACC. And I think as this team is far, far away from playing its best baseball. Like the game on Sunday, I didn't think we didn't play very well. I mean, you had referenced it before. We walked quite a few guys. We gave them 17 free bases, but they found a way to win, which it's a good thing. But I think as we get deeper into April and start taking a look at May, maybe we get closer to playing our better baseball then. And I'm not saying we're not playing well now, but I think hopefully you'll see us play our better baseball as April goes on.
Dylan, what else you got for Coach before we let him go?
Just one thing is we talked about that 22 team a little bit.
Yeah.
Sam Tackett especially says that the closeness of this team reminds him of that 22 team. What have you seen with the camaraderie in your clubhouse this year, so to speak?
Yeah, I think those guys. I think our guys are real close. There's no doubt. I don't hang out with them socially, but I think they spend an awful lot of time together. You got to realize too. I think winning makes guys good friends.
Yeah.
In any sport.
Right.
But I think the test of the better teams is how they get along, how can they learn to lose together? Like when times are not good, how does the group hang together? Or does it start pointing fingers or going off in different directions? If that group hangs together and if they can lose together, you'll probably see a much closer knit group come the end of April. And I don't like talking a lot about losing because I'm a really sore loser, and I hate. I've never been a good loser. And I don't really have any apologies for that. But I will say that the more the group hangs together when things are not going good, the more things will end up going good. And I would say probably any coach would probably say the same thing, I would think.
Last one here, Coach. I think we're all looking forward to it. Spring game weekend coming up when you guys get back from Notre Dame. Softball is going to play Notre Dame at TSP. Of course, football is going on. And then Florida State in town.
Yeah.
You're going to have hopefully, a top 25 matchup here. And at least Florida State should be a top 15 caliber team.
Yeah.
What's the pitch? Everyone's got to pick. Am I going to lacrosse, softball, baseball, the spring game? Get everybody at English Field. What's the pitch, Coach?
Well, I know the game's been moved to 1 o'clock on that Saturday, so it'd be a great opportunity for people to come watch at least maybe the first third of the game, first half of the game, before they go over and see Brent in football and his guys. So, I mean, I think the more people that we get in that ballpark at the beginning of that game, the more it's going to kind of help us to attack Florida State and do what we want to do.
Awesome. All right, Coach. We really appreciate the time. I know you mean a lot to the fans. You mean a lot to me and Evan Hughes, who would have been sitting here long ago. So appreciate it, Coach.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Coach.
Appreciate it.
All right. He's John Szefc, the head coach of the Hokies. You can check out Virginia Tech baseball again. Their next home series is the spring game weekend against Florida State here in Blacksburg. But for now, for Mike Scovan, the sports information director of the Virginia Tech baseball team, for Nick Brown, for Coach, for Dylan, I'm Giovanni Heater saying so long. We'll see you next time.